Okay. So, how long has it been since we've talked?
I think it was maybe 2 weeks ago, right on Monday, 2 weeks. Yeah.
And so far, when was the last time you binged?
Oh gosh. I really don't remember binging, but I remember like that a couple times maybe eating a little too much, but that's been like a month ago or something.
Yeah, well, and you might have eaten too much just because you're learning how to eat to the hunger scale, or was it eating too much? Oh, I remember. It was because you were still kind of dieting but it wasn't a binge, right?
Right. No, it wasn't a binge. It was just me when I started to feel like, oh, I want to be thinner or something, and then we talked about it. And no, so I felt really good. I mean, we went away for a couple of days, and it's just been really nice, different, than I've never felt like I was so obsessed. So it's just been really nice.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, isn't it kind of dreamy actually?
It is. So, and and I've just been kind of doing a lot, like some yoga and stuff like that. I mean, I pulled my back out. My daughter, she's almost 3, and she still wants me to pick her up. So I pulled out my back. So, but I've just been kind of doing some yoga and just feeling, good about it, which is different.
That's awesome. I love yoga for my back. It helps a ton.
Yeah. So that was good. And then what else? Can you hear me?
I can totally hear you. Can you hear me?
It's a little...
Oh, I just need to bring the phone closer to me.
Oh, okay.
So, how often were you binging before?
Oh, well, the dieting was always, I would say there's very few times in my life I can remember actually not being on some sort of diet or preparing to be on a diet. So I would say I binged pretty regularly.
Yeah, because you were dieting regularly. I
was dieting regularly. And the other thing that I was doing as well, which I never spoke to you about, which, I haven't done that either, is like I would also at night, because I would be stressed out, I would drink wine and then I'd eat as well. Mm-hmm. So I haven't been drinking either because I felt like that was altering. It just was a really bad habit I was getting into.
Well, it was all enabling you to not face reality, right?
Yeah.
It's not the alcohol that has to be surrendered. It's the using it to avoid truth. To avoid reality, to avoid truth, to, run away from something you're that you resent. Right?
Yeah.
Coping or compensation. So.
That's true. Yeah. And I think that because it got so bad, sometimes the wine would take me there much more quickly than eating. You know what I'm saying? That would come after. Yeah. Because I wouldn't care at that point at all.
Totally. Because you're like, it's like grace. You're drinking to drink alcohol in general when you're getting the effect for someone who is in a state of victim, persecuted. I'm resent, my life's unfair, is that it gives you a sense of like everything's going to be all better. It's no big deal. Life is good in the moment. It's like a form of denying that reality. So it's like pushing pause and allowing yourself to have a good time for a short period of time.
Yeah, for sure. So I was dealing with that too. I mean, so that is another thing that was eye-opening that I was, in denial about. That's true. Yeah.
I love it. Yeah, well, that would be like me when I recovered, giving up not just exercise, but dieting and any route that I used to escape my perception of reality. Right?
Yeah.
Reality is reality. How I perceived it was what created hell around it. And my perceptions came from my beliefs. The beliefs given to me that I internalized around how life should be.
Yeah.
Right. And then that gives you a sense in reality that your life is not good enough. It's not just not good enough. Life is sucky. Life is always unfair. My life is less than theirs. And when it comes down to it, to recover, I don't know if you've kind of connected these dots or if this resonates for you. I know for me it was very important that I realized that if I don't know how to accept life as it is, how is changing or adding things to it or reaching certain levels of success how am I going to know how to accept that way that it will be, whether it's more, the worldliness is better or it's not. If I can't accept it as it is, that knowledge and awareness of how to accept what it is, you won't know how to do it, even if you get thinnerness, you get your degree, you get that job, you make more money, you buy that house, you get the car, you have the kids, your husband, you get all of that. You won't know how to accept the vulnerability of all of that because it's all relative, you could say.
Yes.
This is why people who are in a perpetual state of depression are in a perpetual state of depression. They are, number one, trapped by all of the things they have to do to try to feel better. So you're trapped to those things. And then when you get better and your visible life is better, you realize that I'm still not happy, so I must be depressed. When it's actually, I'm rejecting reality. You're not accepting the way it is. And the relative, because the way it is, don't you agree, the combination of what I lack, what's not good enough, what someone has that is creating a sense of relative deprivation because they have more than my luxury. My wedding ring isn't big enough. My waist isn't small enough. All that relative, even though you're living in a first world environment with everything you need and more and more and more, you still feel it isn't good enough because you haven't learned or become aware of how to accept it as it is. How do you do that?
Yeah.
I mean, have you noticed that the only way for you to be in this state of peace is just to accept reality as it is?
Yeah. Well, that's what it keeps coming back to, of course. Yeah, and I feel like anything that would trigger me to feel less than, in my mind, less than. And most of it was maybe doing something to do with I felt I wasn't good enough. Of course, that would trigger the whole cycle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And not accepting reality,
Yeah, even if you aren't good enough. Well, what are you like, right? Like, what if you're not good enough?
That's what.
Right, and is that really a bad thing? Is that something to feel bad about?
No.
And not only that, right? Even if we could say, well, relative to that, you do suck. Is it a bad thing? Well, no, it's actually not. I don't think that's a bad thing. Well, that's great. But now let's look at what would create the idea that being or lacking, that's relative to whatever random standard you're being held to. What if the standard you're being held to is unrealistic?
Yeah.
Well, you are going to be lacking.
Yeah.
Should you feel bad about that?
No.
I know, that's where it's like, oh my God, I never thought about the standards might be too high, above and beyond human capacity.
Yeah.
And even if the human is capable and we can push the capacity of the human species, if it requires that your whole entire mind and life is dedicated to fixating and obsessing on it, is it really something that we should be doing?
No, that's why.
Not unless you're okay with the isolation, and some people are. If they are, then go for it, dude.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? To each their own, in terms of like, if it's that important to you or that meaningful, and to where life is what that goal is, and that's what life is, and you want to do that, that is where free will comes into play. You get to do that. But you might be consciously aware of what you're eliminating as an option as a human being from your life, right? It's kind of like with the thin supremacy. You could totally be a thin soup. You could totally reach that thinner ideal. But you're not going to be able to do it without having to obsess about food, hide from food, isolate yourself from social engagement where food is. You have to be constantly defending yourself against any attack around food. That is what you have to now devote your life to. How does that sound to you today?
Oh, it sounds terrible. I mean, I thought also the anxiety and depression that came with that, I thought a lot of that was just like, genetics in some ways.
Oh, well, that's because that's what you're told.
Yeah. So that has lifted because I would be so anxious when this whole cycle would go on. So, and then it would be followed by depression and, everything else. So, yeah, it's awful. I mean, it sounds terrible.
Well, it is depressing. I was depressed too. I was suicidal. And I do think that we're probably not meant to deprive ourselves of food. Well, there's fasting and how we respond to fasting when there's abundance of food around us. Why is it that we're not all triggered to eat it all right just because it's in front of us? Well, much of that has to do with the fact that there is no threat to our food. So, the state of mind someone is in around food being threatened then would promote this kind of obsessiveness around food. You can see that if you're in that state of mind out of a hardwired nature to survive, and you have to eliminate all of the freedoms that, to be creative, to create, to interact with others, that would inherently require some depression. It's kind of built in to that way of being because it kind of conflicts with our and the environment that promotes natural joy and happiness. They found in a lot of research with kids and adults that when given the freedom of choice and autonomy, which means I have my own ability to make a choice around what's right for me. Relatedness, which means the people that are around you that are important to you are comfortable with you making those choices and are promoting you to do that. And also, what is it? It's autonomy, relatedness. Oh my God, I'm forgetting the other one. But either way, these are things that promote the kind of well-being of human behavior, well-being of how our brain works and how our mind works, pleasure in your body, right? Yeah. So we can look at the diet industry and what they're promoting, and its lack of freedom, lack of choice, isolation, paranoia around food, paranoia around what's in the food. There's been research done on people that read labels and the consistency in the mental health issues that those people have. Yeah. Do you think the diet industry that's promoting this label reading, even to include like the dietetics, are they going to promote the studies around people? Well, it's the obsessiveness around it, or even the idea you have to read a label. It's a sign you're feeling you're in danger. Yeah. So that would make sense for someone who has an anaphylactic shock to something, of course. But people that are just reading labels because of these religious ideologies of food, the food morality, which creates this fear of death through disease or whatever, it's a sign of some mental health problems. And the people who are doing it are thinking, I'm doing the right thing. I'm protecting myself from red dye. Yeah. Or whatever it is. Not realizing that their fear of disease might be prompting or promoting this kind of obsessive nature that diminishes their freedom of thought, that can actually promote symptoms of depression and isolation and disconnection from others because they have to worry about what's in the food that a friend brings over or going out to dinner. They have to. It's really sad, actually.
Yeah. Absolutely. No, for sure.
So how are your symptoms then of depression? What's happened with that?
Well, I don't feel, it's lifted. The depression and anxiety is lifted quite a bit.
Is there anything there around it, or is it pretty much just gone? Like, you haven't even noticed it was gone until you noticed it was gone.
Yeah, that's kind of right. When we're talking about it, I'm thinking back, you know, thinking how bad it was, you know. Yeah, I mean, overall, I just feel, I don't have those thoughts. I mean, the thoughts were always, like, dark, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, just feeling that, feeling would you say that depression for you, and it's different for everybody, I assume, because I'm not an expert at this, but I am specifically eating disorder stuff. I feel like I am, but a lot of it had to do with not facing the truth, avoiding reality, denying reality, not willing to face it. Meaning, I am a failure. You weren't willing to face that reality until I said, well, so what? What if you are a failure? And you went, well, hold on a second. I am a failure. Okay.
Yeah, that's where it was really that big turning point for me.
It's instantaneously relieving. It's almost like the clouds just literally go dissipate and they're gone. Yeah. And the only way to do that is to adapt and accept the truth at all times. And you have to ask, is it wrong? Is that really wrong if that is the truth? If I'm doing the best I can and I have good integrity, I mean no harm to anybody, and I may not really know what I'm doing. You may not have a clue. That is the truth. But if you're doing the best you can with what feels right to you, you're not intending to hurt anybody, there's nothing malicious here. Isn't that kind of what you've been doing anyways?
Yeah.
But before, you criticize it all as insufficient and shitty, and you were in a state of constant denial around the fact that it's probably not good enough.
Yeah, for sure.
I know. The truth of the matter is that it's not good enough. Oh well.
Yeah.
So what?
Yeah. For sure. That's where the freedom.
Right, from the depression occurs. Yeah, you face that reality and then question if there's really something wrong with it. I think that's important, right? It's not just, so you failed. You failed. You're never going to be thin again.
Yeah.
People will always see you as a slothful loser.
Yeah.
Which do you see now, too, that belief was yours. You're the one that believed that. So you held yourself to it and then just assumed everybody else thinks that way.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean...
So you were held hostage by your own shame and judgment about it.
For sure. I mean, no one's as mean as
right.
I was, things that I heard,
Yeah, and it's not, was it really your shame and judgment about it? Or was it the dogma or programming?
No, it's the program.
That taught you. Yeah, so once you internalize it, it feels like truth. And so the internalization is where you have choice, right? And that's what's so unconscious. I think this is a relevant discussion around, there's a part of the book that I just wrote about my own recovery where I talk about I became aware this was a choice. Up until that point, it's unconscious. You don't consciously have a choice. It feels like you are run by it. It's like being in a river that is just sweeping you down without choice. And when you lift this, when it becomes conscious of what you're doing, for example, when you become conscious around the fact that your shame about your weight was because you believed that being overweight or having body fat and not being attractive or not having that form, the visible form, was a symbolic of you being a failure, slothful, dumb, not willing to work hard, a lesser person, inferior. You personally believe those things. And because of that, you are held to feeling like shit about yourself. So that's where things are unconscious. You don't know why you feel so shitty about yourself, but because you're not really questioning that belief. So the moment we go into saying, well, is it your belief that you're holding yourself to, or is it a system, a program that you were taught that our culture holds to? Whose is it? Is it yours, or is it a cultural ideal? You were innocent, and most everybody is innocently accepted. Once you see that, now it's like, this is a choice. The eating disorder is ultimately a choice to either believe that thin supremacy is true and you want to hold yourself to it and you want what you get out of it. And the not just that thin supremacy is true, but the heavens and freedoms that you get from being thin is true. If you believe that, it's unconscious why you're so fucking miserable.
Yeah.
Because you think that's a sacred truth.
Yeah, you think it's the best way to be.
Yeah, like God wrote in the Bible, you should be thin. Because thinner people are the only people that are good enough.
Yeah.
When you're thinner, you're more aware.
Yeah.
Which is, if you believe that, the funny thing is that belief in and of itself means that you become less and less aware.
Yeah.
Because your whole mind is shut down into protecting that one position. So again, it's a choice. Do you see that clearly? That this really comes down to me accepting the body as it is and accepting that there are people out there that do believe in thin supremacy because you did. And other people programmed by that are going to feel very similar to that.
Yeah, for sure. It is a choice. I mean, before you don't think
you're not aware.
Yeah.
It's unconscious, right?
Yeah.
And then we open it up and it becomes conscious and you're like, oh shit.
Yeah.
And sometimes it takes a little bit of work to kind of really release what you think you'll get out of that thinness, right?
Oh, yeah. There's definitely, a backlash.
Right? Yeah, because you're just like, but I'll never go out and feel confident in myself. Okay, well, that's not a sign you've accepted it, or you're still that happens if you still hold on to that dogma.
Yeah.
Your whole life you will feel like you are a worthless piece of shit. That's true.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think you posted about people saying, oh, you look thinner or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's funny because I see my dad once a week. He comes over to see his grandkids, but he's always like, so honey, you losing weight? And he said it to me a couple of times this last month, and so it's just like, because he's very focused on that.
Yeah, and to him, that's a love language. He's trying to be encouraging, and if he's asking that, he's trying to be positive, probably. It's very sweet.
Yeah. But that was the focus in our family.
Mm-hmm.
My dad's 87, and he works out with a trainer 5 days a week still. So.
Oh my God, that would be like my mom when she'd come to visit. Oh, Robin, are you going to church? Do you have a calling?
Yeah.
And there were times that I would just be like, yeah. It's just it was sweet to me. That was sweet.
Yeah. No,
but it took that grace and forgiveness and understanding what that meant to her for me to just be okay with that. Not take it as she thinks I'm a piece of shit, like a victim.
No, I didn't take it like that. It's just, he does,
Yeah, believe that thinner people are better people. Thinner people doesn't everybody want to be thin? That's the body. That's the weight stigma. The stigma of the being overweight. And that was the thing with me too, and with everybody I work with, is that you have to accept not just the loss of, people will think that I've accomplished something, that I'm. It's like proving myself. It's avoiding the stigma. I want to run away from being seen as an inferior person or that I've got something wrong with me. That's the stigma that's been attached to body fat since after World War II. And it's actually bizarre to meet someone who literally doesn't give a shit about body fat.
No, it is.
I know.
That is an anomaly.
It is. So these sessions that I'm posting on YouTube are really bizarre for most people. What is she talking about? You're supposed to be totally cool with diabetes?
Yeah.
I know. But this is where to unwind an eating disorder, you have to accept all those reasons why you promote the dieting. Why are you dieting? What are you fucking chasing, It's like, I'm chasing love. I'm chasing acceptance. I'm avoiding rejection, abandonment, disapproval, even though you're the one who's rejecting and abandoning yourself because you believe in thin supremacy. Again, that's unconscious until it is conscious. And until then, you don't have a choice, right? Because it's true. Fat people suck. Thin people are cool.
Yeah.
And you got to be able to do this with your parent, with your dad. He's going to say, I'm concerned about your health. Have you thought about, I'll pay for my trainer. You can come to my trainer. I'll pay for it. You know, you've got to, and you have to be able to see that as loving. And to be able to say, oh, that's really sweet. Thank you so much. And not get offended by it because they hold themselves to that. It's kind of sad for that person, you know, unless it brings them joy, then that's what they should do. If your dad's body image is what brings his life joy, then you could see then why he would center his life around that. Like it's an accomplishment, right?
Yeah.
And you could see why he would want you to do it too.
Yeah.
You should focus 5 days a week or more. And look at yourself in the mirror and then feel bad about those little pockets of fat. And then go to the trainer and say, I don't like this fat right here. It's right there.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many clients came to me like that. And I'd be like, okay. Oh, right here. Okay. And I just wouldn't bring it up again.
Yeah.
And they'd end up training with me for like 6 years. And they'd still be like, I don't know what to do with this pocket of fat. And I'd be like, shove it in your bra. I know. I just didn't play the game, you know. I wouldn't be like, oh, that's so ugly. We really should maybe do some spot reduction. Try some chest fly. You know, I just never did it. But
well, they're trying to ask you to,
help them feel better about themselves.
Yeah.
Because that little pocket of fat is like really affecting my self-esteem, Ramen. But you could see like your father would be nitpick his body like that.
Yeah, I mean he's not like that, but you know he's always talks about people's weight. But I mean he told us like my husband and I, he said, oh, my assistant came in wearing this really crazy outfit and she's Fat City. Me and my husband are like,
okay. Good for her. That's what I would have said. Damn, girl, good for her.
So wrong, yeah.
Proud of her.
He's always on, you know, the thing, so I just ignore him at this point. I mean, I don't even, it's not like a thing for me at this point.
Yeah, because it's again, that's like the way he feels comfortable with himself. And then because it's, again, it's like dogma. People like that, they just don't get how someone could dress like that. I don't get how she could just flop her Fat City around and wear that, because he's demonizing it within himself, thinking that it's a truth from God and wondering why they are doing that, right? Projecting his fear of body fat onto that person. And it has nothing to do with the woman that works with him. Nothing.
Yeah. No, I know. So that, I mean, that was just the, you know, the growing up, it was constant. So, but now it's you know.
Well, you could see too now why it was so important for you to me, because you're really seeking just your father's love. It's like, I just want his approval, his respect. I want his admiration. Yeah. Admiration is a big one for a lot of people.
I think that was really big for me. Yeah, for sure.
You want your parents to be proud of you, to be like, oh, I'm so proud. They have done me well. There's that admiration that it really comes with a lot of baggage, because now you have to know what your parents like and you have to become what they want so that you can get their approval. And it's not really authentic or truthful about who you are. It's just truthful about what they want and what they're compensating. And this is how generations pass down dogma. It really comes from that kind of innocence of the child. Wanting their parents' approval, wanting to honor the parents. And I knew for me, that I, and this was very important in my recovery, was to let go of that admiration. I had to let it go. And what an amazing thing. It was like saying, but I'll be I'm the biggest failure of the family. I am a big disappointment. The opposite of that, right, is where the fear stems is disappointment, embarrassment, a family embarrassment. And I just played that out in my mind in the very deep contemplation. Again, I think this might have been out of body, where I realized being a family embarrassment is actually so much easier than an eating disorder.
Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah.
I know. It's like, oh my God. And just accept it. And I remember thinking, if that's the case, if that's the actual truth of me, because I'm doing the best I can, well then if I'm below the dog in the pecking order, well then I'll just accept that role. And then that gives me all the freedom I need to just be authentic and real and be the true Robin that's within me, whatever that is. And I have that freedom, that space of freedom just whoosh, opens up. And I knew too, there was a sense within me that knew that my parents really did love me. They just had lost sight of what that was, and they filtered it through religious doctrine. That's where, for me, it's like your father's filtering it through that body image doctrine. It's still love. It's just conditional. Yeah, and it's based on what he thinks makes him worthwhile, which might be coming down from his fucking parents. You know what I mean? So it's like past. So the poor guy is still trying to prove and be proud of himself through trying to look good.
Yeah.
Like a slave. He's a slave to that system, a slave to the body image culture. By dedicating his life and teaching his children, and he thinks he's doing the right thing.
Yeah.
Part of it too is if he's that critical of women with body fat, he's probably wanting to keep you safe from other men who are just like him.
Yeah.
That's another way to think about it. Not that you need all this, but it's like, oh, it is a way to protect the people you love, because he's that way. He doesn't want you to be looked like that from another person. Right. So he's going to want to protect you from being shamed and minimized by some thin supremacist like him.
Yeah.
And so by conforming to that, to him, it feels safe. It would feel safe that you need to work on that people need to be thin so that they get the respect they deserve.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so then you have to give up the respect that you think you're going to get from the eating disorder, right? The respect I get from being thin. I have to surrender that. I have to give up the respect that I think I'll get from it. And I have to accept respectlessness. The pride that I think I will get, I have to surrender. And the fear would then come up that, you'll live a life of shame. Yeah. There's so often, and you'll hear if you go back in my videos, there are clients in here, and everybody goes, I went through it, where you start to go, but my life will be forever so shitty because I'll be so ashamed and hide because my life is such a pitiful waste of suckiness because I have a big ass and a fat stomach. And that's true if you believe that you are a failure and you think there's something wrong with that, right? That's why we focus so much on that last session. Is there something wrong with that? Especially if by accepting the truth of the nature of the body you have, is there something wrong with it if it is the truth of the nature of the body you have without the binge eating, without the dieting, right? Both sides. Because the dieting, in fact, is what is the source of the binge eating. So, because you wouldn't have shame. You got it. Yeah, you wouldn't feel like you had failed that one bite if you didn't eat something that someone told you should be restricting, which is a form of dieting. So the shame around eating food that is the precursor to the binge wouldn't occur if you didn't diet. If you remove all that and you actually eat like a normal human being. One of the views I had in this was like, what would my body have been like if this body was allowed to live in the mid-1800s, like the Victorian era? I remember thinking, what would this body look like in the Victorian era? I was like, why would I be? It's almost like if I could go back centuries to where this concept of thin supremacy didn't necessarily exist.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my God, I would have been so free. I would have had a normal life to whatever that life would have been back then.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was a weird thing or thought to have, but I remember thinking, well, those people were lucky because they didn't have to be thin.
Yeah. It was a sign of, yeah.
Well, they probably had some other weird fucked up standard, like in China with the foot binding, and they had to work. They did have corsets. They did have corsets and weird wigs, you know.
Yeah, those corsets look pretty brutal, but yeah.
Oh yeah, and then they had their hair plucked up so their foreheads looked longer. There was all sorts of weird shit that it's like this is a human thing. It's a lower state of consciousness thing. It's like we can sit here and judge it. In reality, it's something that's probably innate to the human way of thinking when under a threat with other people that don't feel safe with other people. Someone who doesn't feel secure in their own capacity to function is going to be afraid of other people. And then they're going to try to create a separation, right? So white supremacy comes from a really low state of consciousness, religious supremacy, all of those divisiveness, this or that, right or wrong. The dualistic way of thinking is survival as a survival mechanism. So to do it with a superficiality of the way someone looks, you can look at that and say it's very tribal.
Yeah.
What culture doesn't do that? People who maybe are a little bit higher in consciousness who can adapt and live as the Romans do in Rome, right? You can assimilate. You don't have to leave and live on a mountain somewhere and shave your head. You don't have to do that. Anyways.
Yeah. No, it's crazy.
Well, it seems a little ridiculous when you come out of it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's cute. We play dress up. Humans are so funny. It's like we're going to play dress up and then we're going to separate our dress up and tell people who's better than who based upon whose dress up is cooler, nicer, more expensive.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whose makeup is better. And then we're going to actually pretend like we're better human beings because of it. We're going to inflate ourselves to be so amazing. You know?
Yeah. No, it's crazy train. Yeah.
Don't you feel, do you feel like, I know when I recovered, it was like I came that close to suicide, like so close. How weird it is that it's this easy to come out of. Like it's that easy.
Yeah. I mean, obviously there's a resistance in the beginning, but now that it's out of it and living like this, it's so different. Yeah, it's so crazy that you think that you spent so much time, you know, I don't want to say wasted
because you needed to go through whatever you needed to go through to get to this point. So it required for you to suffer to a certain degree before you were open to anything else or any alternative. So you can look at this and go, well, if you didn't suffer this much, you could have lived with it moderately forever and still have this moderate depression forever, you know, and you don't come out of it. It's like this awareness, right? When you come out of it, like, oh my God, that's an illusion. It's an illusion of thought that people have and they believe it and then they act on it, right?
Yeah.
But they don't know that it's an illusion. It's a dogma. It's just a thought. It's just a belief. And that belief could go away. It wasn't here before. And you're going to teach your kids something that you're miserable doing. It just becomes like, it just opens your mind to see how much bullshit's going on. It's so dumb.
Yeah.
I don't know. To me, it's so relieving. It makes life so easy, really. What it does is it takes that burden, weight, and the seriousness of life, and it just removes it.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's crazy, the heaviness that you feel when you're in it.
Oh my God, it is so heavy.
Yeah.
And then your mind can't focus on anything else. It's like, one description I've used for my own suffering is it felt like I had a huge rock or boulder that was pinning me to the ground and I couldn't breathe and I couldn't see anything but the boulder. And so everything in my mind and my whole essence, my whole life was devoted to that boulder.
Yeah. Good way to put
And it was terrible. It's terrible.
It goes into every area of your life.
Yeah, and then for some reason it shrunk down into a tiny piece of sand.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, well, I remember that boulder. It's now a piece of sand. It's there. I'll never forget. I'm aware of that being in that space, but it's like a piece of sand. It doesn't do anything. You know, that's why when people say, oh, when you have an eating disorder, you will always suffer. You will always suffer with it to some degree. Maybe not always as bad as the worst times, but it can come back. You'll always have the urge. It's like you're going to have to do it day in, day out, really for the rest of your life. And I just am like, that is true for people who do not surrender the dogma, or it stays unconscious that it's dogma. And that right there is like a death sentence for many people who are suicidally depressed in it.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the literature, like books you read about eating disorders and stuff, it is kind of doom and gloom because...
Well, the success rates are so horrible. That's just fine. But that's
and so more depressed. Yeah.
Well, to me, it's an indication of how poor the systems are that are in place to help people. And it's not because they are sucky therapists and sucky people. It's so confusing. Having an eating disorder is really, really difficult to explain when you're in it. You're confused. You're disoriented. You have these intense impulses that you feel you have to do. It's like, I feel like I have to do it. I need to do this. But yet your life has been hijacked by it. So you have no life. And so you end up with horrible, horrible dark depression. But yet you're still holding on to this concept of thinness and dieting, despite the fact that it is destroying all relationships, destroying your health, destroying your life, destroying opportunity. You have no freedom. You have no emotional development. So you're staying stuck in a really juvenile state of mind, suffering from, you're so self-centered, it's just intense. And it's like, well, you have to, if you want to recover, you have to want to give up the dieting.
Yeah.
Well, how are you going to do that if you want to be thin? Well, you can't. So then you have to want to give up the thinness. Well, how are you going to do that if you want the superiority? I want the approval. I want the accomplishment. I want the pride that my parents might have. I want the attraction that might bring a mate. There's all the wants attached to that. So how are you going to get rid of the desire to be thin if you're not willing to give up the desires of what you want that you think you'll get out of that thinness? Right?
Yeah, there's nothing really out there.
Talking about that. Bam! It's like that. It's not that hard. But it's really hard for someone who is in it to actually explain this to someone, to say, I feel like I'm going to die if I don't do this.
Yeah. And there's not a lot of, I don't know, no one else is doing what you're doing. So it's, as far as I know.
Oh, I hope there are other people. I really do hope, because there's so much, it's so sad. It's so sad. People are dying every day, and it's more and more people are dying, not just from the suicide from this, but from all the physical problems that an eating disorder, it's got the highest morbidity rate of all mental illnesses. It's horrible.
You're saying bulimia.
Bulimia, binge eating, anorexia, all of it.
It's terrible.
It is. It's horrible. Your likelihood of death, especially with anorexia, is like massive.
Yeah.
But then again, it's like I would have rather have died than to accept gaining weight. I was willing to commit suicide because I couldn't do what I needed to do to stay thin any longer. So I was just going to die. And then I realized, again, it took, for me to become aware, it took the willingness to commit suicide and the humility around the utter and complete failure, and then the grievance of the life that I was about to end, for me to be open enough to look at the cause and to get enough distance from it to actually see what was happening. And again, it came to me in some miraculous out-of-body experience. I don't know how else to explain it other than that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So and I see that now, right? And I remember working with therapists and just realizing they didn't have a clue. And that was very disheartening too, to go to a specialist who specializes in an eating disorder and for them to not really get it, or you can tell they don't know why you are this way, why it's as bad as they don't have a clue. And in their mind, they might think that, oh, she might have some trauma, and oh, she probably had tell me about your relationship with your mother. Tell me about, like, oh shit, this means I'm not going to get better anytime soon because my relationship with my mother, be it that it is important, and it was important, but I never would have told the therapist, oh, I've been religiously indoctrinated, and if I change religions, I'm going to be rejected and abandoned from my parents, because I believed in the religion at the time. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, you're totally in it.
When I work with someone and I know that they're very rigid around religion and politics, I go right into that, and they don't like it necessarily.
Yeah.
So I'm like, how are you going to get better if you're not going to give your life grace?
Yeah. No, it's true. Did you go to a therapist before?
Yeah, a couple of them. And they were all specialists, and I could just tell they had no idea. And it was really, because when I went, I was like to that point where I was like, I need some clarity. I don't know why this has happened. I don't know why, because I was unconsciously aware of what this was. Didn't question the thinness as the problem. So it's unconscious why I'm obsessively exercise, why I'm binging and purging. It's super unconscious. I don't get it because I never questioned my desire to be thin as a problem.
Yeah.
Even though it's no wonder you're binging and purging. First of all, you're dieting to such an extreme to stay thin. But I never questioned that as the problem. So it's unconscious.
Yeah.
Right? And so when someone finds my YouTube videos, I don't know if this was the case for you, to hear that was just like, holy shit.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, even though I've been searching for what's wrong with me, I don't understand why I can't do it right. That's this, and it's me that's not being able to succeed at this.
Yeah, and it's me that's crazy. What's wrong with me?
Yeah.
Never questioning too the diet strategy might be really messed up.
Yeah.
Here, drink these shakes. You're going to drink 2 shakes a day, and then you're going to have a reasonable dinner. Forever.
Yeah. And then I would read, your stuff that, eat intuitive eating and this stuff, but I couldn't get it because I was still so stuck on
losing weight.
Yeah.
Well, that's the biggest problem. That's the biggest roadblock to the whole thing. They've taken something like eating to hunger, which is not intuitive. That is an actual physical. It's I intuitively smell things, and it's intuitive when I smell a rose. I feel like I'm intuiting a rose when I smell it.
Oh my gosh, yeah. So all these things, and I try to do that, and then I'd be like, fuck that, I'm in a binge right now. This shit is crazy. I can't even get
a sense of it. I must be addicted to food. So I'm going to go join some food addiction programs that are going to tell me to get rid of all sugar and all gluten, all dairy.
Yeah.
I need to eat on a regimented food plan permanently forever because I have a disease that I will never, ever recover from because it's a genetic propensity from either my mom or my dad that is permanently hardwired into my life. So I might as well fucking shoot my brains out. And that's how I felt.
I'm sorry. But yeah, it's so crazy.
Yeah, no, but that tells you how little they actually understand, but that's because those of us who still were in it, and we don't have a voice. There's no real understanding ourselves, because we're not questioning thin supremacy. We're not questioning that narcissism. The idea that I am a pile of shit, I am a literal piece of shit worth nothing. And without this, I will evaporate. I have no existence other than this because you've put your whole entire survival mechanism into the concept of needing to lose weight.
Yeah.
Ugh.
I know.
I can't wait to get this book done. I really...
It's coming.
It's like a freaking molasses.
I'm like halfway there.
Well, I think I'm halfway there. And the funny thing is when I first started really going for it, I was like, oh my God, I'll be done in like a month or two. That's funny.
Well, I'm sure I can't wait to read it. So you did, yeah. So
you're going to read it and you're going to go, yep. And it's, I don't know. My goal here is that it will get into the hands of someone who is hopeless.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And they can read it and feel there is hope. There is a way I can choose to get out of this because it is a choice.
Yeah, well, that's fantastic.
I'm going to get that right there. That thought and that statement is going to get so criticized.
Yeah, but yeah, of course it will.
This is not a choice, Robin.
Yeah, I know, but yeah, it has to.
All right. Well, then you keep on suffering. You go.
Yeah.
And that might be so for people who are unconscious around that. It may not be, right? Like for me, it wasn't a choice until I became consciously aware of why I was doing it.
Yeah.
And then it became a choice. So.
Well, I think there'll be people do it. Of course, I mean, you probably with your videos, people at first go, "Oh my gosh, what is she saying?" And then you think about it, and you know it's true because you know internally it's true, even if you want to reject it at first.
Because it hurts. And not only does it hurt, but it's like, oh, I'm not ready to recover yet. I can't even go there.
Yeah, I still need some time to fuck around.
Yes, that's more the case. It's like, I can't face that. I know what she just said, la, because I want to be thin first.
Yeah, and that is, I think, the reaction for a lot of people. But then if they know that they suffer, and then again, they know that
it gets worse. Yeah. That's okay. That's awesome. Again, it's like I didn't recover until the very exact moment I recovered.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So I had to get to that very exact moment of what brought me to that space was that much suffering. You know, I think that helps in terms of being able to guide someone through this. Having suffered to the degree that I did has allowed me to actually really connect with other people who are suffering similarly.
Yeah, well, that's true.
So I have an understanding from inside of my own. I don't have an understanding from inside theirs, but I can have compassion for what that feels like. And at least if it's similar to the suffering for me that it was for me, I can give them a voice to express it. And because that to me was actually a very harmful aspect of suffering with an eating disorder was the fact that I had no form of expression, and it's like poison. It just sits. Like my throat was just like I had no voice in any way to understand, not only to describe the horror and the darkness, but no voice to actually understand why it was as bad as it was. And so to be able to maybe be that voice for someone, it's like being able to do sign language for someone who can't hear.
Yeah.
It can open up their awareness to now become conscious about what's going on. Once it's conscious, now we have a choice, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I know I've repeated that multiple times. I'm clearly trying to get this writing in.
Yeah, well, no, it's true, because once you do have a choice, that's why people don't want to maybe know it.
They don't want to see it. Exactly. I want to know what she just said, because there's something you're getting out of it, and that was the other thing.
Yeah.
It's like I have quite a few people with eating disorders that follow me. They clearly don't watch my YouTube videos, which is totally fine. That's cool. I don't care. But the gratification they get out of just even being labeled with an eating disorder, they like it.
Oh, yeah. I never thought of that.
It gives them a sense of specialness.
Yeah, that's interesting. I see. They don't really want the content, is what you're saying.
Because they really get gratification out of feeling that they have something special, that they have, it's like that victim position or the martyr complex around like, poor me, I'm back in a hospital. Even though like they just got out of like 4 months in rehab, they're back onto, well, I feel like I should go lose some weight. So I'm trying to talk to a dietitian, but I don't want to tell her too much because I don't want to go back into rehab. It's like, okay.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
They get a lot out of it. So they really don't want to recover. Right? Yeah. I don't think they're conscious about that, though. They really love the drama. They love it. It's special. It gives them a uniqueness. It's like the drama.
Yeah, I see. Yeah, but they don't also want to have they don't consult with you.
Of course not. Why would they do that?
No.
I wouldn't take their money. I've had people contact me who I could tell. I'm just like, they're arguing with me. You just paid me $200 to argue.
Yeah.
Right? In that consult. I'm like, no, I'm sorry. It's not going to work. I'm not giving you a refund. This has been 90 minutes of my goddamn time. But no, you're not even open to suggestion. You're trying to argue your position.
Yeah.
Which means, why are you even talking to me? Sometimes it's because they want to feel, and I've had a lot of people come out and tell me this later, I wanted you to be wrong because it meant that my life was hopeless. And there was something they got out of that narcissistic martyrdom.
Yeah, I see.
To where if this doesn't work, my life really is shitty. And I can tell everybody I've done everything. I even worked with her and it didn't work for me. They love feeling that way. It gives them a sense of power.
Yeah.
Well, you know, and to me, it's just like, I don't waste my time. It's like you don't go to here we are talking. I shouldn't have to convince to let this go. You should be in a position to where you are convincing yourself.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
Not me. I'm not going to convince you. It's like the moment I said to you, what if you are dumb? Who cares?
Yeah.
No, Robin just felt me dumb.
Yeah. No, I know. No, it's been great. Oh, man. Yeah. No, I'm very excited. I'm very excited for your book, too.
I know. I am too. In fact, I just got, I'm writing this one chapter, which I feel like it's pretty powerful, very heavy. I talk a lot about my out-of-body experience in it. And I got it back from my editor and she goes, holy shit, this is deep. And I'm just like, what is she saying? Does that mean she could even read it? Because sometimes she's like, this is so boring, Robin. I can't.
No, so she liked that part, though.
I don't know. I gotta call her because, I don't know because it is heavy. This is so heavy, and I'm talking about suicide and awareness, and it's the chapter where I open it up to survival mechanisms. So I'm going into Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and I mean, it's just, I've had to remind her a few times. Her name is Connie. She's so amazing. She's so good. I'm like, Connie, I'm not selling this to the masses. I'm selling this to someone who suffers with an eating disorder.
Yeah.
And so yes. So it's like very specific reader.
Yeah.
Because she's got that business mind. I mean, she edits everything. Yeah. And I'm just like, this is very specific it's not to the parents of someone with an eating disorder. It's not to the husband of someone with an eating disorder or wife. It is to the person who is in suffering, who is in that very dark place. And I need to speak to that language and they'll connect to it.
Absolutely. No, it's fantastic. But did she edit your first book or?
Yeah, she did.
Yeah. So she knows.
She knows about the HCG and she knows about that stuff. And that's I've been writing that too. it's like simultaneous. So I haven't written this HCG stuff for a while. That could have been done a long time ago if I didn't have ADD.
Oh, so it's a follow-up from...
Yes, it's like it's a newer addition to it. So it's like updated what I've learned over the course of the last 7-8 years.
Oh yeah.
I am really hoping that's done before the new year. And I don't know if it's going to be very big, but because it doesn't need to. I don't need to readdress the science. That to me is still very relevant. The approach to it, the dangers of it psychologically. I'm going to talk more about that. The dangers of the protocol psychologically, which is why I'm going into the survival mechanisms, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, because I have to apply that then to where HCG and the 500 calorie protocol is dangerous.
Yeah.
So I have to.
For people that have.
Yeah, but I'm also using that in this other book. So it's like, well, do I write the big version from the other book and then filter it down and add the HCG conversation, right? Then it's just like, well, which one am I going to publish first? Thin Supremacy, and then the HCG edition?
Yeah, see, you're trying to figure out what...
Yeah, so I'm just writing right now, and eventually it'll all come together, and it's just very intense. It's a very intense stuff. I don't want to waste people's time. You know, I'm not writing fluff. I'm just going right into it. So...
Well, your first book was awesome. I mean, that was, so...
Well, thank you. I mean, I read it now, and I'm like, damn, girl, Robin, you're a bitch. The overuse of the word gluttony, it actually is very relevant. It's just there needs to be context and depth, and that's, to me, where this next edition comes. It's going to give it context, because without context, it really sounds judgy McJudgy pants around weight and emotional eating.
Well, I didn't take it that way when I read it. I mean,
Okay, well, after this work, you're going to go back to that and go, wow, Robin has really evolved around the discussion.
Well, when I watched some of because also all that work you did at the clinic, when you have those old YouTube videos, a lot has changed, obviously.
Oh, I'm just honing right in. Now, back then, it was like, I still kind of like, well, let's talk about, eliminating it was so complicated. Yeah. Because it was like, well, you overate. Well, let's talk about why, what emotion, and that stuff happens naturally, what I found. Naturally, without effort, after someone let goes of the body image stuff. It's almost like what you're experiencing. Do we really need to talk about it now? But, no.
Yeah. No, that's true, because I couldn't imagine ever eating naturally. I mean, I just can't believe it. It's like crazy.
Well, it happens organically because it's hardwired into our mechanisms. It's like I go pee when I need to go pee. I don't have to sit on the toilet for 3 hours waiting. And that's how I hate calling it, it's not intuitive eating, but eating to hunger is very much the same. It's like, well, I'm not hungry. Well, within food is not an option. So deal with whatever victim story you think you have.
Yeah.
For me, my life sucks and I can't eat because Robin said I can't eat till I'm hungry.
Yeah. Oh, it's true.
It is a process, but it's so much easier and more direct when we eliminate the body image. And that's what I need to write about. That's the update. It's like, because what I presented in Weight Loss Apocalypse was an idea that we can look at the relationship someone has emotionally with food with the guide of the eating to hunger, because it gives you a differentiation between the justifications and rationalizations to eat from an actual physical sensation to eat. Right?
Yeah.
So that's relevant. Of course that's relevant. And it actually was something that I did after I recovered. Right? So I'm working with someone, and over time, I was like, it's almost impossible. Almost totally and completely impossible until someone has completely surrendered the concept of who they think they are in relation to culture and their family as it relates to their body image. If they haven't surrendered the body image and what they get out of it and what they're afraid of with it, it's almost impossible to teach eating functionally because they have to guard and they have to safeguard and defend themselves from gaining weight, right? And they have to maintain the weight they lost. So it's
totally impossible.
You got it.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm writing in the next Weight Loss Apocalypse edition. That isn't the same thing as what I'm writing in Thin Supremacy.
Yeah.
Can you see how it's like, God, it's kind of complicated? Because some of the stuff that's in Thin Supremacy that I'm going into much more detail is going to be kind of like a short version of it's going to be in Weight Loss Apocalypse.
I see. Yeah. Well, that makes sense.
So I've gone back and forth between writing this one and then I get distracted and write that one. And then I'm like, well, shit, how did I get distracted writing this?
Well, it's hard if you're doing them simultaneously, I assume, because you're thinking of different.
Well, I'm going back and forth. Not intentionally. It's just happening because I'm like, well, crap, that's going to take forever to write. I should write this one. We can get that published in a couple months. And then I start writing it. I'm like, oh, well, I got to write about this. So then I go back to that context or content. Yeah. You see that's what's happened.
You're getting into more detail.
Yes, that's what's happened since January.
Yeah.
So I'm just being patient with how it's, I'm like, well, for whatever reason, this is how it's happening. And I got to give myself grace and hopefully you guys are giving me grace and we'll deal with it when the time comes. It would be great. It would be so freaking obvious if I could have this behind me at the new year. It would be awesome.
Yeah.
That would be like the best case scenario. So I'm hoping for that. Who knows if it'll actually happen. I don't want to be short too, and that's the other thing is when I can tell I'm just doing it to get it done, I'm really brief. I don't explain anything. I'm just like, well, they should just know what consciousness is, and Dr. Hawkins and his scale of consciousness, and they can go to the internet and find out what it is.
Yeah, no, I know what you're just saying. You're trying to get through it. You just want to do the right
thing. Yeah, and I'm not doing a very good job, so I have to actually stop myself and really think thoroughly about what's relevant, what I need to write. Like writing about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. How much detail do I need to put into that?
Yeah, that's a complex. It can be a little. Yeah, you can go.
So boring. Yeah. So how do I do it? Do I write a preface for that chapter? Maybe drink some coffee right now before we go. Get your cigarettes out, you guys. Just smoke while you're reading because this part right here is a little boring, but it's important.
Yeah, it's very important, I'm sure. I mean,
Well, do you remember me talking about, if your food is not secure and your third hierarchy is hijacking the first one or waging war, it's really quite important when you look at the dynamics of the survival mechanisms, right?
Yeah, I mean, I remember studying it because I was a psych major and it's been a long time since
so fundamental.
So it was in a whole different light as far as eating, so it is very important.
I know. Well, and then what is survival mode? What are the mechanisms in place physiologically, how it manifests? Because that's very much a big part of anxiety that occurs in almost everybody who has an eating disorder when they're around food.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it was really interesting. You were talking about in one of your videos about the symptoms of survival mode. I thought that was
type
really
A.
Interesting.
Obsessive.
Perfectionism, all or nothing.
Very little grace, overreaching. Yeah. It's very bipolar.
Yeah, and people always say that they think that's part of their personality, and then when you kind of enlighten the situation, it's like, wow, that's not my personality. It's, all these symptoms of being, fight or flight. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
don't be proud of it, and let's try to get rid of it.
Yeah, exactly.
A lot of people take a lot of pride in that.
Oh, I think so. Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Thinking they're
better than totally.
Yeah, to get things done, and even if things are all crazy. Yeah,
right. Even if they're a slave to it, and they're constantly judging other people and can't accept other people's work. I get that.
Yeah,
I get that.
Yeah.
I'm not judging that. I've been there.
Yeah.
And when it comes to certain things, I'm still like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
where I'm going to put a shrub. My husband couldn't care less, right, about the landscaping. But I'm like, no, it needs to move just a little bit to the left. He thinks I'm freaking nutty. And then I'm like, no, the hole's not big enough. You need to dig it. No, give me the shovel. I know it when I'm in it, but I'm like, but this is my garden.
Yeah, it's your thing. Yeah.
I know. Oh, I laugh at myself. Because some of this is, and when I go home, like I have a family reunion this weekend, which is going to be so fun. I'm hoping all 10 of us can be there. I'm not sure my sister Jenny, who was just diagnosed with this cancer, may not be there, and understandably so. But,
I was going to ask you.
She's still recovering from the surgery. I mean, they took her entire uterus out. That's a big surgery, and and she's been moving. And that poor woman, she wants to be there because she potentially could be gone if this cancer comes back. She won't be here for the next reunion. Which, you know what, we'll probably have one anyways for her, if that's the case. But it's going to be pretty cool. I'm going to try to videotape and post videos of my family for y'all to witness. Awesome. Yeah. So my point was, my dad has suffered significant symptoms of PTSD from Vietnam and his childhood. Yeah. He's such a good person. He's so super intelligent. Anyways, he is like that. Yeah. So I'll come home and he's got this new gadget, and I have videotaped him doing this because it's so funny between me and my siblings. How controlling he is around, I have to pay attention when he's like, here's how you use the coffee maker. You can't just fill up the coffee with water. You have to use the alkaline water, and then you got to make sure that this thing is attached to that, and you only use 4 of these things of coffee, but then you're going to get 2 of the tacchino and make sure you get the right combination. And I'm just like, that is so me sometimes.
It's hysterical. It sounds so sweet.
It is, and you just do it. Some of my siblings can't handle it, and I just like, okay, all right, let me take notes. Did I do it right, Dad? Did I do it right? And I'm freaking 40 years old, and I'm still like, it's so funny. Yeah,
that's so cool. So where are you going? Is it in Boise or no?
Seattle.
Oh, well, so you're not going far.
No, not going far at all. My sister outside of Seattle. Yep. So we're going to go to Bellingham for a wedding, and then, so it's going to be pretty fun. I love Seattle. I love Washington. I'm from Washington State. I love that state.
Oh, you are originally? Yeah. Oh, I didn't know that.
Well, I grew up there. I was born in California, and my dad was in the Air Force, and we moved all over.
Oh, yeah. So you've been all over.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that sounds like a lot of fun.
Oh, it's a riot. It is a riot. We all get along very well.
Oh, that's
great. Just 10 people similar to me.
Yeah. That's great.
I know. That's why I'm like, it might be fun to capture some funny things between me and my siblings. It just gets really irreverent.
No, that's awesome. You should try to take some footage.
I will. Let's schedule to follow up.